The story begins 10 years in the past, as the wizard King Conrad is being restrained by the kingdom's magic knights. Julius leads the knights, and they don't agree with what he's trying to do, telling him he should give up. But Conrad refuses, activating his key magic, which opens countless doors that release his magic and break him free from his restraints. A knight named Miriana charges at him, but he easily blows her away, and they realize he wields the Imperial Sword. There is an intense battle, and Conrad insists he will create a new world where everyone respects each other and can laugh together. He activates the power of his sword, splitting the arena in two and causing a huge explosion. All the knights seem to be defeated, but Julius suddenly appears behind him, catching him with his chrono magic. Conrad warns him if he is sealed away, the Imperial Sword will also be lost, but Julius accepts the responsibility as the next Wizard King, and he continues to seal Conrad away. Conrad refuses to give up, even in his last moments, but he ends up being sealed away. 10 years later, the kingdom is at peace, and they are holding a great tournament to decide who is the strongest among the magic knights. Each of the 9 magic squads are participating, and the first contestant is a boy named Yuno, the vice captain of the Golden Dawn squad. His opponent appears, but he wears a mask, and the spectators wonder who he could be. Their fight begins, and Yuno attacks with a blast of wind magic, but his opponent cuts right through it with his sword, and Yuno realizes his opponent is actually his friend Asta. At that moment, Conrad suddenly appears, along with 3 other hooded people. They reveal themselves, and a barrier is created around the arena. Conrad says it's time to finish what he started, using the power of his sword to create beams of light that absorb the magic power of everyone in the arena. He approaches Julius, who now has a much younger appearance, and it seems that after an intense battle where he lost most of his power, the seal on Conrad weakened, allowing him to break free. He tells Julius he intends to carry out his plan, and his companion sends countless magic soldiers into the crowd. An old man is about to be crushed, but Asta saves him just in time. He fights against the soldiers with his swords, and he starts getting targeted, but he is saved by his friend Noelle. She tells him that everyone's magic power is getting absorbed, but Asta can't feel it, because he actually has no magic power himself. The magic soldiers pile onto him, but Asta easily blows them all away. Conrad's 3 companions approach, and Julius recognizes them as wizard kings of the past. They were all stripped of their titles for being too radical, but Conrad revived them using the power of his sword, and they all support his vision. There's Princia Funny Bunny, who uses Legion magic, Edward Avalanche, who uses ice magic, and Jester Garandros, who uses barrier magic. Jester tries to attack Asta, but Asta cuts through his attack, and they find his ability to neutralize magic interesting. Conrad is suddenly attacked by a knight named Marx, but Conrad seems to be able to scan his grimoire, and he easily takes him out. Meanwhile, Asta and Yuno struggle against the past wizard kings, but Asta's captain Yami suddenly appears, unleashing a barrage of slashes. The other magic squad captains arrive to help, and Yami manages to save Julius, thanks to Fenrir's spatial magic. Yami wonders what they should do, and Julius tells him to get a special magic tool from the research branch, but Yami refuses to leave him alone, so he decides to send Asta to get it instead. They are suddenly attacked by Edward's ice, but Yami buys them time, and Asta escapes with Fenrir and Noelle. The Magic Knights put up a fight, but Conrad tells them it's futile, because once he activates his sword, the whole kingdom will be destroyed. Yami wonders how the sword can do that, but Julius reveals it has the power to unleash all the stored magic at once, reminding him of how Conrad absorbed power from everyone in the arena. Conrad stabs the ground with his sword, revealing that 10 years ago he had altered the arena to become a weapon, transforming it into a flying fortress, and Jester creates a massive barrier around it, cutting off the way to escape. Meanwhile, Asta's group reaches the research lab, and they are greeted by a woman named Millie. She hands them over to a girl named Nero, and Noelle wonders if she knows more about Conrad. As they head down an elevator, Nero tells them how Conrad was the 27th Wizard King. He had an impressive track record, and he was recognized by everyone, but one day, he changed and rebelled against the kingdom. Using the power of the Imperial Sword, left by the first king, he tried to destroy the kingdom, but Julius and the other magic knights managed to seal him away. They wonder what kind of magic he uses, and Nero reveals that his key magic allows him to open doors that can create any kind of magic, and he has the ability to steal someone's magic and use it for himself. They reach a huge door which Nero unlocks, and the elevator proceeds to go even deeper. They are shocked at the level of security, and Nero tells them that this is where they store the kingdom's most important magic tools. Finral wonders about the tool they were sent to get, and Nero reveals it's a prototype sheath for the Imperial Sword, and it should be able to control the sword's power. But when they go to retrieve it, they find Conrad is already there, destroying the item, and he throws Nero's assistant Sally at her. Asta tries to attack, but Conrad gets behind them, and he easily takes the three of them out. Asta is restrained and imprisoned in stone. Nero wonders how he found their location, and Conrad reveals he stole Marx's memory magic, allowing him to read their minds, so he also knows everything about them. He reveals what happened on the outside, with the kingdom being taken over by Princia's soldiers, and the captains who fought against him at the arena were all defeated. Noelle tries to attack him with her sea dragon magic, but she ends up being restrained by him. He takes a liking to her magic, so he absorbs her grimoire with his key. Asta gets free, but Conrad can now use her sea dragon magic. Asta survives thanks to transforming into his demonic form. He chases after Conrad, trying to get Noelle's magic back, but Conrad ends up burying him in countless pipes. It's not enough to keep him down, and Conrad summons leeches that bite onto him, but Asta manages to dispel it with his sword. Conrad is impressed by his anti-magic ability and says he wants to talk, because he feels they want the same thing. He reveals that the Imperial Sword has power similar to his key magic. The first king created it to leave behind exceptional magic for future generations, as well as the magic and wisdom of every wizard king. With the ability to unleash all of its stored power at once, he intends to fuse the magic from the past wizard kings with all the magic he has ever stolen, to create an overwhelming compound magic, which he intends to drive into a mana vein in the earth, to cause an unprecedented disaster that will wipe out the whole continent. But he says the sword also has the power to store the souls of the dead, so he plans to bring back those who were valuable. He sees Asta's memories, and says they are similar, because he was also hated for his magic. He thinks the world is corrupt, and needs to be destroyed and remade, so he can create an ideal world where everyone respects and laughs with each other. It's the same thing that Asta dreams of, wanting to become the Wizard King to achieve the same thing, but he doesn't agree with Conrad's methods, saying that a Wizard King should protect their people. They continue to fight, and Asta seems outmatched. Conrad opens countless doors, blasting Asta with his magic, and Asta barely manages to survive. Conrad tells him to give up, saying his fusion magic will be complete by the next day, but Asta claims that never giving up is his magic. Conrad is surprised to hear this, and Asta suddenly gets teleported away. Finral says he is out of magic, and Conrad starts to approach them, but Yuno suddenly appears, and they are joined by Millie, who gives Sally some healing potions. Yuno tries to hold Conrad off, but his magic seems to have no effect, and he becomes exhausted. Conrad is suddenly caught by Millie and Sally, and Nero rushes in with her sealing magic, but she gets blown away, and it doesn't look like her prison can hold him, so the group quickly retreats. When Noelle wakes up, Yuno tells her they're in an emergency shelter, and he explains how Yami was able to cut open a hole in the barrier around the arena to let them escape. Asta wakes up, causing a scene, and he tells them Conrad will carry out his plan at dawn. The remaining Magic Knights wonder what chance they stand against a Wizard King, but Asta gives a speech, and manages to rally them to fight. There is suddenly an explosion, and Miriana appears, along with some other squad captains and knights that were away during the attack. They have some men watching the flying fortress, and it seems Yami and the two other captains are still alive. They wonder why they are being kept alive, and Nero says it's so the sword can keep absorbing their power and supply it to their members. They have a meeting about what to do, and they decide they need to neutralize the Imperial Sword in order to stop Conrad's plan. They launch a raid on the Black Bull's squad base, defeating the surrounding soldiers, and Asta shatters the barrier around the base. They all rush in, explaining the situation to their companion Henry, who starts absorbing power from all of them. They are all fed magical food that replenishes their power, and Henry gains an enormous amount of power. He uses his power to reconstruct the base, and he turns it into an airship. They start to take off, but they come across a gigantic wall of magic soldiers. Asta wonders how they are going to get through, but one of the captains goes out, using his world tree magic, and he manages to make a hole in the wall, allowing the ship to pass through. They make it to the flying fortress, but it's surrounded by an enormous barrier. A magic structure appears, and Jester decides to show them what a wizard king can do, firing a massive beam at them. But the knights fight back, combining their powers to fire their cannons, and a knight named Adlai uses his mirror magic to reflect the blasts all around, attacking Jester from all angles. They manage to destroy his structure and get past, but the other two wizard kings start to appear in front of them. However, Finral uses his magic to teleport the ship past them. They approach the barrier, and Asta enlarges his sword, preparing to break the barrier. Princia and Edward land on their ship, but the knights have prepared a trap for them. Nero seals them with her magic, and Finral teleports them away. Asta starts attacking the barrier, but Jester suddenly kicks his sword, causing the ship to start falling, but Miriana appears from underneath, and she pushes it back up. Asta combines his power with Yuno, and Henry sends the ship at full throttle. Jester tries to stop them with a barrier, but they manage to destroy it, and even make it through the second barrier. Asta and Yuno get through, but the barrier instantly regenerates, and Miriana says it's up to them to stop Conrad. They see Conrad in the distance, but Jester attacks them with a giant barrier axe. Yuno tells Asta to go for Conrad, as he decides to hold Jester off. He activates his Spirit Dive transformation, combining his power with his Spirit Familiar. Meanwhile, outside the barrier, the Magic Knights prepare to fight against Edward, and Miriana confronts Princia by herself. Princia thinks she is boring for approaching her alone, but Miriana is aware of her reputation because there has never been a record of her losing a fight, and Miriana gets excited. Princia decides to test her power, summoning her soldiers, but Miriana blows them all away in an instant. Meanwhile, Yuno fights with Jester, trying to blast him with his magic, but Yuno gets knocked down, and Jester tells him he can't win, because while they are within the barrier, their magic power is continuously replenished by the power of the fortress. But Yuno claims he is not alone, as Yami suddenly appears. Jester realizes that Yuno's earlier attacks weren't trying to hit him, and he was aiming to free his allies. The two other captains join them as well, but Jester isn't worried, because they should all be weak after having their magic drained, telling them to bring it on. We see the Black Bulls squad fighting against Edward. They combine their attacks, but it's not enough to harm him. Edward activates his Mana Zone magic, creating a field of ice that stops all of their movements, and he summons an enormous frozen monster. But the squad refuses to give up, fighting back, and they manage to destroy the monster's arm. The monster fires a blast of energy at them, but Adlai uses his magic to reflect the blast right back to the monster, destroying it. However, Edward summons an even bigger monster, which freezes everything in its path. Meanwhile, Miriana struggles against Princia, who keeps swapping places with her soldiers. She stabs Miriana from behind, but Miriana grabs onto her sword, and she activates her Mana Zone. She creates a huge field of fire, which condenses and creates a huge explosion, but Princia appears unharmed, and she compliments Miriana for being the first person to make her fight with her own hands. She smashes Miriana all over the place, but she acknowledges Miriana's strength. However, she claims she is still stronger, and she ends up putting Miriana down. As Princia walks away, Miriana suddenly gets back up, telling her the fight isn't over. Princia wonders how she can still move, but Miriana thinks about all of her comrades that are counting on her. Her body is engulfed by flames, charging at Princia, and they exchange blows, and they both throw a flurry of punches, but Miriana manages to smash her into the ground, blowing her deep underground, and Princia is surprised she lost in a fist fight, but she summons her countless soldiers, combining them all together, and she says it's time she used her full power. Meanwhile, Yuno and the captains are struggling against Jester. The captains buy Yuno time, while he charges up all his energy. The captains all get blown away, but Yuno is ready, charging at Jester, who puts up a barrier. Jester thinks his attack is useless, but his barrier starts to crack, and he gets pushed back. However, his energy goes wild as he activates his trump card. Asta approaches Conrad, but Conrad tells him he's too late, as he stabs his sword into the ground, unleashing its stored power into the mana vein, and causing massive damage around the kingdom as the ground starts to split. Conrad tells him to give up, but Asta says he will stop him, and they both claim that never giving up is their magic. Asta tries to approach, but he is held back by Conrad's countless attacks. Conrad tries to convince him to join him, but Asta refuses, saying it's his dream to become the Wizard King. But Conrad claims that even as the Wizard King, he won't be able to change anything, as he thinks about how his beloved wife was killed. He surrounds Asta with his doors, trapping him in a prison, and he tries to convince him for the last time, saying he can make him the Wizard King in the new world. But Asta refuses, saying that becoming the Wizard King should be based on your own merits. He activates his transformation, getting free, and he lands a blow on Conrad. Asta charges for the Imperial Sword, but a number of doors appear, and he gets blown away. Conrad decides to get serious. Since he can't convince Asta to join, he decides to stop holding back, absorbing all of his magic, and taking on a new form. The two exchange blows, but it seems Conrad is far stronger, striking Asta with his lightning. Asta becomes exhausted, and he gets stabbed by Conrad. Conrad claims that Wizard Kings are useless and unable to bring about any real change. But Asta thinks about Julius, who protected everyone at the expense of his own life, so he refuses to give up, awakening his inner demon, and he grows a second wing. He calls Conrad unfit to be a Wizard King for betraying everyone who believed in him, saying that the Wizard King should exist to inspire the people. Conrad claims he doesn't know how corrupt the system is, and that the only way to change it is by destroying it. But Asta claims everyone in the kingdom is doing their best to make it a better place. Conrad calls him naive, as the two clash their swords. Asta goes for the Imperial Sword again, but Conrad stops him. He claims he tried to make change as the Wizard King, but he was ultimately betrayed. Asta refuses to give up, believing he can make a better world with everyone, where everyone can respect and laugh with each other, as he disarms Conrad and goes to finish him off, but Conrad's grimoire blocks the attack. However, this allows Noelle to regain her powers, and she transforms into her Valkyrie armor. She clashes against Edward's monster. Adlai uses his magic on Noelle, creating countless copies of her to fight the monster. Noelle was abandoned as a child, but she has finally found a place where she belongs, so she refuses to give that up. Together with the other members of her squad, they manage to defeat Edward's monster. Noelle delivers the finishing blow, cornering Edward, but she tells him it's not too late for him to start over with them. Meanwhile, Jester has created a spiral structure, blasting Yuno's group with his energy, but Yuno charges in and manages to block the blast. Yami takes this chance, combining his power with the other two captains, and he is able to cut right through the structure and land a hit on Jester. There is a huge explosion, but Jester is still standing. Yuno follows up with a devastating charge, and he blows Jester away, smashing him into the barrier. However, Jester refuses to lose, taking down his barrier, and he absorbs all the power for himself. Meanwhile, Asta thinks about how many times he has almost died, but survived thanks to his friends, so he refuses to be in a world without them. Conrad blasts him with his energy, but Asta withstands it, and he is able to cut through Conrad, as well as the Imperial Sword. The sword becomes neutralized, and the shaking around the kingdom stops. The Wizard Kings start fading away, and we see Princia wishing she could have continued her fight with Mariana. Asta thinks it's all over, but Conrad uses his final technique, which consumes his own life to activate. A giant gate appears in the sky, as Conrad claims he will never give up. Asta is blown away, and we see a giant meteor preparing to wipe out the kingdom. Asta's transformation is undone, but he also swears he will never give up, as he rises once again. Yami arrives, together with Julius, who hands him the Imperial Sword. A number of portals open up around him, and all the magic knights from around the kingdom send him their power. Asta gains a new form, preparing to go beyond his limits, as he charges at Conrad. He cuts into the meteor, and he tries to split it with the Imperial Sword. Conrad pushes back, and Asta wonders why he wants to destroy everything so badly. Conrad claims it's all for the sake of those who are oppressed, but his locket opens up, and he becomes stunned, thinking about his wife. Asta takes this chance, swearing he will change things when he becomes the Wizard King, and he manages to shatter the meteor, and he delivers a finishing blow on Conrad. Conrad realizes he lost, but he feels at ease, looking at Asta, thinking he will be able to make the change that he couldn't, rooting for him to become the Wizard King, and telling him to never give up. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.